Whenever someone brings up the September 11th attacks, some people will bring up a song called Gori Njujork. If that doesn't sound familiar, this certainly will. The song would become so popular that a fan music video was made for it. Yeah, sorry to break it to you guys, but considering who published this, this is an obvious fan creation. Now, it's hotly debated whether or not this song was actually about the attacks, and as the only English speaker who makes videos on Serb patriotic content, I'm here to settle this debate once and for all. Is Gori Njujork about 9/11? Yes. Well, more of a response to 9/11. You really thought I'd just end the video with no elaboration? Nah, I think everyone should know the origins of the song. As far as my research goes, Gori Njujork is the unofficial name given to the first track of the single, Slušajte dok vas ne uhvate za, which translates to listen while they don't catch you for, in which catch is more akin to arrest. On the cassette labels and the CD disc, there's only the title and the artist with no track title in sight. So I assume that, like Guslet tapes, these are part 1 and part 2 of the title track? Confusing, I know. Furthermore, when the Nina Trade channel was established, the tracks were uploaded with the fan-given names. The existence of the channel is a little complicated, so just know that these aren't the original given names of the songs. Think of it like their intended play was like, I don't know, some middle-of-the-night recording that you could probably find once or twice in its run. As for the album itself, well, to be honest, it looks like a game of Mad Libs. Group Orthodox Christian people? People without a home? The motherfucking Hague Tribunal? This sounds like one elaborate shitpost to piss off the Americans. But here's the kicker. It wasn't. Around the time of the release, anything super patriotic wasn't seen very well. As a result, this was released anonymously. When the album's true artist was leaked, he had initially remained silent. He would eventually come forward and do one interview that is now left within the depths of the archives of kninja.net. Sometime in the late 2000s, an interview appeared in a subsection of kninja.com. This article was a little different, as unlike the other two listed, Baja isn't the interviewee, but rather the CEO of Nina Trade and Tromeja frontman Željko Grujić. Most of the interview is seemingly innocuous, though if you read a bit closely, he briefly talks about the single. While not explicitly said, it's implied that the single was either banned from circulation or had its circulation limited in the country it was produced in, with Bosnia and Herzegovina and Australia being the only known places where it circulated. Within Bosnia and Herzegovina, territories outside Republika Srpska surprisingly had good sales of the single, though Grujić elaborates that it was merely for the artist's name, Srpski Talibani. While sales numbers aren't provided, Australia seemed to have sold the most copies, as it exceeded the Bosnian sale numbers in just a day. And while there is Balkan diaspora present over there, there's no concrete reason to explain this phenomenon. While there is more in this article, we'll get to it later. For now, the most important part of this article is that Gori Njujork wasn't meant to insult Americans. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you skim the song, you'll quickly realize that the word for America is used, but it's not used in the context of the American people. New York and Pentagon were intentionally used as they were symbols of American foreign policy. And as an American, I agree with this assessment, as New York is the financial sector of the US, home to Wall Street and the New York branch of the World Trade Center. I say that because apparently Los Angeles has one too, but the New York branch is a lot more popular, even before September 11th. The Pentagon, meanwhile, is the headquarters of the Department of Defense. It's where military intel missile launches and the head honchos are most of the time. Actually, the only Americans that are mentioned are Bill Clinton, the 42nd president who not only was parodied in the Animaniacs and the husband to Hillary Pokemon Go to the Polls Clinton, but was also the man behind this clip.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
As well as Madeleine Albright, who was the US representative of the United Nations and was then upgraded to Secretary of State during the Yugo Wars. She was involved in foreign policy within the Balkans, and to my fellow Americans, she was also influencing the foreign policy for the Middle East. And we all know how our little forever desert war is going, right? Joking aside, she allegedly made sure that the Rambouillet Agreement went the way as we know it. Allegedly. Also, her investment firm was trying to privatize PTK, which was the official post office and telephone company of Kosovo. If you couldn't tell, both had direct involvement in the Yugo Wars, although the Clinton administration has declassified some war-related documents via the Clinton Digital Library. I have a hunch that we haven't seen the last of it. Case in point, in 1995, the US said that they had satellite images of Srebrenica, with Albright showing them in a UN assembly. This evidence was supposed to be used during the tribunal, but the Pentagon allegedly pushed back, saying that they weren't going to release any material regarding Srebrenica until 3 to 5 decades from then. This is alleged. I haven't seen any Western sources, let alone domestic sources, talking about this. Then again, all UN Profor related reports that I had found had to be obtained via the Canadian version of the Freedom of Information Act, and even then, we only have the Canadian side, with the trail ending in early to mid-1994. So, to the Clinton Library and the Pentagon, with the Epstein connections getting more of a media spotlight and the Yugo Wars becoming more and more irrelevant here in the United States, I think it's a good time to quietly release whatever remaining material you have. These aren't the only prominent figures mentioned in the song. Osama bin Laden is jokingly said to have not been a Turk but a Serb, which is ironic considering that Osama contributed to the Zagreb-based Third World Relief Agency, and also visited Sarajevo a couple times during the Yugo Wars. There's plenty more people listed here in this song that had some sort of involvement in the Yugo Wars, and to those who didn't care of the conflict or was born after the Clinton administration and or are relatively new to the Yugo Wars, like me, your fellow Zoomer, Zillennial, whatever is going to try her best to go through this list. Tony Blair was the, at the time, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and was involved in the Kosovo War. Which I find interesting because, well, without getting too political on the channel, let's just say that a decision he made during his 10-year term as Prime Minister from 97 to 2007 is, well, it's not going so well. Robin Cook, on the other hand, was the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom and was a prominent figure during the Kosovo conflict, going as far as to being a close contact of Hashim Thaçi. He did so much PR work for the province that he might as well have been a UN official to what? In regards to the Kosovo War, he had a legacy that left a lot to be desired. He would end up dying under suspicious circumstances. Initially an open and shut case of a heart attack, his case would be reopened following a violation of the Scottish equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act. I was initially confused about who Solana was, but it's none other than the Secretary General of NATO during the Yugo Wars, Javier Solana. Solana was one of the head honchos of the IFOR and made sure that the Dayton Accords were fulfilled. He also was the one to enact the carpet bombing operations within Belgrade. He would then leave at the end of 1999. Kofi Annan was the, at the time, Secretary General of the United Nations. He assumed authority and then gave said authority to initiate airstrikes without a vote during the war in Bosnia. He also became a special representative of the Secretary General of the former Yugoslavia from late 95 to early 96. Man, why did I decide to do this in the first place? Anywho, Kofi Annan is a very interesting figure because he was not a rags to riches story. According to Wikipedia, he was raised in some sort of aristocratic family. Okay, maybe that Does that make me sound like I'm a communist? I'm not a communist or a socialist or whatever it is, okay? I'm just trying to present the facts as they are. Anywho, I do apologize if the timeline and my wording is very vague. Even I was scratching my own head when I was listening to the playback. But to make things clear, he was Undersecretary General at the time of the Yugo Wars. When they couldn't reach the actual Secretary General, Anand would assume authority as Secretary General, which coincidentally would become his position about 2 years later, to authorize airstrikes without a vote. He would also be criticized for the lack of prevention of a genocide in Rwanda and in Srebrenica, to which he said this apparently, make of that what you will. After his career in the UN, he has like his own foundation, as you can see in the video, and he died peacefully at a very old age. I think he outlived his twin sister. Damn. I guess twins are more common than I thought. Jacques Chirac was the French president from 1995 to 2007. He was actually one of the harder people to research, as finding any info on him and how it relates to the Yugo Wars was a little difficult. When he was inaugurated in 1995, he called for peace in Yugoslavia and also told Clinton to be more harsh on the Serbs. But what's up with the mention of him in Gori Njujork? That must be the latter, right? Well, yes and no. The context of this is sort of hard to find on an initial search. Even his Wikipedia page doesn't mention anything. As a matter of fact, you have to go to the Serbophobia page of all places. Apparently, he went mask off on a bunch of European leaders the same year he was elected. One version of the story was that he told a Greek leader that the Serbs were terrorists, and another version from Vojislav Koštunica says that the French president said that the Serbs respect neither God nor law, and they are a nation of robbers and terrorists. As implied, I don't think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. He did take quite a hard stance on the Serbs during the Yugo Wars, and as you saw, within 1999, he backed Clinton on the carpet bombing of Belgrade in '99. There's also an alleged quote from him during the Kosovo War where he said Serbian children will no longer smile or Serbian children will no longer laugh, but that was allegedly attributed to Lawrence Eagleburger, and even then, there's nothing other than Serbian sources, especially social media posts, repeating the claim. Last but not least, there's a mention of Chief Prosecutor of the ICTY, the Iron Lady of The Hague, Carla Del Ponte. Wait a minute. I know that name. She went on to speak about the organ trafficking and collusion in Kosovo in the second installment of The Weight of Chains. Interestingly, she actually wrote a book about that 6 years prior, which ended up launching an investigation with results 2 years later. The results validated her claims. She's actually a very interesting figure. Compared to everyone else mentioned here, she was willing to treat cases equally, as she was open to prosecuting perpetrators of the Belgrade bombings, NATO. She also accused the Vatican of helping hiding Ante Gotovina. As for her career, she was at some point forcefully removed from the Rwandan genocide trials for challenging the Rwandan president and retired in 2007 from the ICTY, a year before Karadzić's arrest. Now, it's not to say that Del Ponte was this holy martyr that the Yugoslavs criticized to hell and back for. She was quite flawed, but when you compare her to everybody else, she is certainly one of the more fairer? Neutral? I don't know, you get my point. So now it all makes sense. Gori Njujork was a diss track to the powers that be, not the individuals of a nation. As promised, let's take a look at the other components of the release. The second track, or half of the single, dubbed Onaj sjebo što je trebao, isn't anything remarkable. If you're familiar with the works of the label Patriot around this time, you already know what to expect. Karadzic hiding in the Romania area and Ratko being told that his own people will protect him. Nothing that you haven't heard before. Interestingly, the song alludes to the arrest of Slobodan Milošević, which happened earlier in the same year as the September 11th attacks. This is important to mention as it further debunks the 1999 or 2000 release date, and if I were to give a generous estimate, gives us a new release window of late 2001 or sometime in 2002. I'm not familiar with the nitty-gritty of album production of this kind, so who knows how fast they were cooking with this album. Before we move on, I have to quickly address this. If you listen to the track, you might hear a familiar tune. While it is fun to assume that the group Orthodox people might have been inspired by a certain song, along with SRT Knin airing a couple of Nina Trade music videos, this is just a mere coincidence. It's like saying this was inspired by this. Or this being inspired by this. At the end of the day, it's folk music, and there's even a video from Serb-Held where he deconstructs the song with older material. But I digress. Moving on, remember when I said that the Bosnians would buy this single for the artist's name? Yeah, so we all got duped. Despite what the cover says, it's all clickbait. The so-called Serbian Taliban are none other than the people on the cover: Karadzic, Milošević, and Mladic. Unfortunately, this also means that you won't hear them sing. Oh well, at least we have this. The actual performers are listed as group Orthodox people, and their anonymity is self-explanatory. While us Americans nowadays can laugh this off as unnecessary, if we had caught on to this back then, there would have been death threats and a lot of rubbing salt into the wound from us. Trust me, when I was growing up, one of my friends would be a relentless bully to my other friend just for liking Green Day's American Idiot. And remember how I implied that Grujic was the creator of the album? That's also not true. While he does break down aspects of the album, he's the only person to publicly disclose his involvement with the single. We still don't know who the songwriters or performers are, though if I were to guess, it would probably be some obscure krajinski group that fell out of relevancy years ago. One last component is the producer as Haški Tribunal, or the Hague Tribunal. Now, while this may sound like an elaborate shitpost, it's actually anything but. I'd even go as far as to say that it's a tribute to them, as according to Grujic, if it weren't for them, the album would have never been made, and that they're the only ones that could ever catch the so-called Serbian Taliban. Even the single's name, Listen While They Don't Catch You For, is a nod to them. And that concludes our deep dive into Gori Njujork and the single it came from. In 2004, a second installment of the Srpski Talibani was released, though it wouldn't receive a CD version. For unknown reasons, the executive credits and publisher aren't anonymous, though songwriting and recording still are. The Serbian Taliban this time would also have a new member, Vojislav Šešelj. Unlike the debut single, it seems that the restriction or ban of this material was lifted, as there's a picture showing a Serbia-based cassette stand selling this tape. And while we still don't know who the singers or songwriters are, in due time they'll either reveal themselves or may take their secret to the grave. Maybe they already have. Who knows? That's all I have, and I hope you seize the day this September 11th without crashing twice, and I'll see you guys in the next video.